Hello and welcome back to the YouTube channel of Bethel Evangelical Free Church Hanley. I'm Pastor Gervais Charmley. This is another Shropshire church. Shropshire is one of the most rural counties of England, and the area around Clee Hill is noted for a number of deserted and shrunken villages. Many of these still have their churches. We've been already in this series to Tugford and Abden. This is perhaps the most spectacular of those churches. This is Heath Chapel in the deserted village of Heath. Now, there is now a little settlement a bit away from the chapel, but the original settlement has disappeared. It's all just lumps and bumps in fields, and the chapel is in the middle of basically a field of sheep. It's gloriously rural. Very little has changed here in the last 100 years, and probably the last 150 years. It is such a simple building. It's a good example of a Norman church, probably 11th century, maybe 12th, but it's very early. Villages have been built, and the only stone building would have been this chapel, and that's all that has survived of the village. It's very old. There are surviving wall paintings, probably multiple layers of them, one on top of another. The medieval wall paintings, they don't seem very often to have just, this is how it should be. It's changing fashions meant changing wall paintings, because that's the way the world is. So that's the light has just gone off. It's all right. We've got the sunlight. I don't need to put the internal lighting on again. As we go around, we'll just see the features of this building: seating, pulpit, everything here. Some of the seating is medieval. Everything here pretty much is about over 200 years old. So have a look around and be impressed by this ancient church. As usual, of course, we start at the west end, the liturgical back of the church. And we have, first of all, what every good Norman church should have, we have a tub font. You can see why it's called a tub. Nice, big, you could give a small child a bath in there if you wanted to. You shouldn't, but you could. The benches here at the back, these are medieval. These may be as early as the 14th century, certainly 15th century. And we have box pews, these are 17th century. We have the roof, medieval. I'm pretty sure that bit, those bits there are purely decorative, which is why they're not touching the walls. Just see there some of the wall paintings, and there's multiple layers of them. You can see a cross in there, much faded, of course, and they have been painted over and painted over and painted over. There's actually a war memorial, which is unusual given that's hardly anybody here, to the glory of God and in proud memory of Thomas Henry Norgrove, RGA, that's Royal Garrison Artillery, so they were in charge of the guns in fortifications, the heavier weapons, who died from wounds received in the Great War, March 29th, 1918. Tablet placed by relatives and friends. It's notable that the war even affected here. You can just see there a bit of Jacobean 17th century wall painting. They painted texts in these decorative frames. You can just see some of the text, not enough really to make out what the Bible text is, but it does tell you that this was in use in the 17th century, just of course also when these box pews were installed. These are Jacobean. Again, the population in the period would have been very, very small, which is why you've got these big box pews and very few of the old. Basically, box pews were rented. If you couldn't pay for your pew, you sat in one of these seats here, or in these seats here, which have been partially renewed, but still those are basically. There would have been tops that have been sawn off. Pulpit is a 2-decker, not a 3-decker. The 2-decker is the more unusual version. There's still a good number of them around, but you can see you've got your pulpit and reading desk, and they are joined to each other. Now, we have here an old engraving of the church. Now, very often, these old engravings, they show you this is what it looked like before. But we look at this and we go, well, that's what it looks like right now, and that is 1902. It looked like that. 2023, it still looks very much like this. Now, one of the reasons going inside here is you can see here how the box pew has actually been built up around earlier benches from the look of things. There's these nice Jacobean carving here on the pulpit, some bits and pieces of old stonework, and here we have a surviving cap on a pew. It's a very unusual sort of flower device at the top there. But some of this material looks like it's not originally from a pew. I mean, some of this material, look at that there, that suggests to me that is something on its side, perhaps. And these may be the old choir stalls, but again, they may be bits of other woodwork. Now that looks like a cap of something, perhaps a screen. And here we've got nice 17th century communion rails, and there's somebody's table tomb in the chancel. Of course, we don't know who it was. Just a single, simple Norman east window there, and another Norman window here. This is a building that's, the actual structure is pretty much what it would have been when it was first built in perhaps the late 11th or early 12th century. And really incredibly. And you see the communion rail comes out, and you've got your three sides, so people could theoretically kneel on the sides. And there's the tomb. There's a rather battered carving. It's impossible to tell what it was originally. And again, we've got some black letter carving here, and there's the back end of the chancel arch. So incredibly simple and unchanged since 1902, basically, and unchanged since before then. Indeed, very little has been done to the in terms of furnishings since the 17th century. And all that has been done is that the furnishings have been restored and made a bit better. And you've got this very typical Norman arrangement at the west end there. But then we've got this one new window, 17th century window, that's been opened up for the pulpit. So you get more light for the preacher on his Bible, and more light here for the reading desk. So very, very simple, very, very lovely. And that's a font. Now, just be careful when you go outside, because it's surrounded, as I say, by a sheep field. But the sheep will behave themselves. And so we turn around, there's that lovely pulpit, and there through, see, obviously it's much simpler on the inside as the chancel arch, but all whitewashed, all been whitewashed. You can see there some of the painting, and extremely lovely. This is one of the little treasures of Shropshire. Relatively little known, strangely enough. The other thing you note before we go outside is that there's a box pew in the chancel as well. Quite often that was the most prestigious place to have your box pew. And so here we are outside at Heath Chapel. You can just see how simple it is. These two windows and a door here on this side. But you've got these buttresses, very typically Norman buttresses. They don't stick out very much. And they give a certain amount of ornamentation, as well as giving a little bit of extra strength to the walls. So we'll have a look around the outside and watch out again for these sheep that surround the chapel. They keep the grass down, and of course it's the sheep that took over after the Black Death, when the villagers either died out or moved away. It's important, of course, to emphasise that, as the name Heath suggests, this was very much marginal land. Always, it's never been. It's not good agricultural land. It's good land for sheep, as you can see, and you can plant orchards and things here. But it's not really a lot of good arable land. That simplicity, leaning slightly to the west, but again, it is very old. So we'll have a look on the outside. Then we'll zoom in on the doorway. Here again, there's no bell cot or anything. The east end the west end rather, is very typically Norman. Very, what you expect with any Norman church, particularly these little ones. Three windows and a opening in the roof. That's for ventilation. Actually, no, that's where the bell is. There is a little bell, but the bell is internal, which probably would have been originally as well. Heath is noted, say, because it is this very largely unaltered Norman chapel. It's unaltered because they never had very much money, even in the 13th, 14th centuries before the Black Death. And you can see here, this is, there would have been some village over there once, but not anymore. And this very simple side here, where, sorry, watch out for sheep, where you've got that big window that they put in the 17th century to light the pulpit. And that's the only difference here, really, from the way things would have been in the Middle Ages. Really, very two-cell design. It's typical of these little Norman chapels. It's your two-cell, you've got your nave and your chancel, some of the sheep, and we go round, and again the chancel's leaning a bit. They often do, they settle a bit, and you see that east window that's just this. Another thing you will notice, comparison from inside, is how small the windows look outside compared to inside, and that splay on the inside is to allow more light in. So watch out for the sheep. Absolutely sheep. There we are, sheep at Heath Chapel, because it is in the middle of a sheep field. And so here we are, right back round now to the south side, and typically there's this main entrance. It's a chapel, of course, because it was never raised to the position of a parish church. So again, unlike Abden, unlike Tugford, both of which were parish churches, this has never been a parish church. This has always been a chapel, meaning it relied on clergy from elsewhere. And here we are back round to the door. And you can see this lovely Norman doorway. Very often these buildings, the only ornamentation outside really will be this Norman doorway. And it's a big grand entrance. Here is the church. Here is the one stone building in the entire village, the pride of the village, and it says something about the villagers' aspirations, but also about the villagers' piety, that this is where we go to meet God. And whatever we think of the superstitious elements that there would undoubtedly have been, and there certainly were in medieval piety, there is very much this idea, here we go to meet God, and that God's house should be the best house in the village. And so there you have it, Heath Chapel, this magnificent little survival from the 12th century. The church has a very little altered in the part of the passing of 8 centuries and more. Coming up, I guess the 20th century, well, the 21st century going past, or she's looking at that car, probably it's the 20th century, but late 20th century. There's a little road that runs past. So there we are, Heath Chapel. Marvellous little building, and again, well worth a visit. It's in the middle of a field. Readily accessible, though, if you know where it is. So thank you for watching, and may God bless you and keep you until next time.